We are continuing our 7 days of lipless crankbaits. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We're gonna go in depth into these guys. I got a few of them, I've thrown them before, and it's a great tool for this time of year, that late winter, early springtime. It just seems like lipless crankbaits, because of the tight vibration that they have, they catch a lot of fish, and they're super versatile for where the fish are setting up, because there's two baits that I know the pros are throwing on tour they're not talking about. They're slightly different, but the same thing, and dude, they catch them. I have been whacking them on Gunnersville, on other lakes with them, and they're pretty cool, but it's definitely different. But one of the reasons that lipless crankbaits work so good this time of year, think about where you're fishing in late winter and early spring. These fish are looking at points, flats, and they're kind of relating to those breaks that go up to those flats. You know, maybe it's 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8 feet of water. Might have a little bit of wood on it, might have some grass, but it's kind of like mid-depth range. A lot of times we're throwing like little crankbaits this time of year, the DT series, Rapalos. But what's beautiful with a trap like this is you can fish in a lot of different water columns, depending on the speed at which you retrieve and your line diameter. We're also going to get into that and what kind of setups that I'd recommend in general for fishing these the most efficiently you can for these bass that are moving up in that pre-spawn kind of window. So I guess I've held out long enough. Let's talk about what these two crankbaits are, these two lipless crankbaits, and what sets them apart so much. So if you guys watch the video, you know I've talked a lot about crankbait rattles and vibration, such as this guy. So this is a one knocker. This is one of my favorite traps here. It's just got a single knock in there, or a single weight that knocks back and forth, creating kind of a unique vibration, especially compared to some of the more BB oriented, where they got a bunch of BBs in them and they're kind of creating that multi-rattle kind of like shaking style sound. And vibration, when it comes to crankbaits, really makes a difference in fish eating them, because they see so many baits that look like this, but making them sound a little bit different makes a big difference. Well, this year I've kind of focused on being a little more subtle. So instead of actually looking at vibration, I'm looking at a lack of vibration. So the two baits that I've actually started playing around with, the first is the Thunderhawk. I got it in red too. Red's a great color for this time of year. If I were to recommend like 2 or 3 colors to have, something in red, and then something in kind of like a shad or maybe like a chartreuse kind of thing, because a lot of times the water gets a little bit dingy this time of year with the rain. But basically, this Thunderhawk, this is the Sergeant half-ounce version. Hey, can't hear anything? There's no rattles in it. It's a lipless crankbait that's totally silent. What's also kind of unique about it is the vibration that it puts off. As we talked about earlier, the fish are really sluggish and they want a super tight vibration, but oftentimes they don't want it to be going, you know, like that sort of jackhammer sound that you get from a chatterbait going through the water. They want something that's a little more nuanced, a little more subtle. And what's interesting with this guy is, if you guys look closely, the body form on this does not have that flat, super kind of like pronounced nose that you see in a lot of these lipless crankbaits. The body is more rounded. It has more of just a soft edge all the way around it. And what that ends up doing is it creates a very soft yet noted vibration, because the bait's still kind of wiggling back and forth, but at the same time, it's not really sort of pressing against the water with all those flat areas on the bait to create a lot of disturbance. It's loud enough where I've caught fish in 1.5 foot visibility, but at the same time, it's subtle enough where I can throw this in gin clear water and these fish will still chase after it. It's definitely a different feel. The Thunderhawk Sergeant definitely does not have a really strong return onto your rod when you're reeling it. A lot of times when we're fishing these lipless crankbaits, you put 2 or 3 reels in and you'll feel almost like a chatterbait. This has a very subtle kind of return to the rod, but the fish eat it up, dude. I have had them absolutely choke it. And I think 2 big reasons for that are the softer shape to the body, the lack of the flat areas that you see in your standard traps or lipless crankbaits, and also that lack of vibration. You're still creating a disturbance and displacing water because the bait is vibrating through the water. You're getting that tight action, but it's only creating the water displacement versus all the rattling and the racket that other standard traps like a one knocker or one with BBs will actually make. And I think that subtlety, especially when we're talking about high pressured lakes or clear water situations, I know on Gunnersville, I've caught fish behind guys going like down points, down flats, where they're throwing like a standard rattle trap, I'll get this guy out and catch them up, dude. They absolutely chow it. And then that red color is also key. But this bait comes with pretty decent hooks. I'm gonna put links to all these down on Tackle Warehouse so you guys can go check them out, see if there's colors and stuff that apply to your body of water. But I can tell you, just from experience, this guy is different. It feels different when you're fishing it. Another kind of cool aspect to it is a lot of times this time of year is we're gonna whip this trap out. If you guys watched the last video, I kind of went through kind of my trap retrieve, how I'm actually fishing it, how I'm reeling it. One of the things that I'll do, if you have like a little bit of leftover strandy grass or some kind of cover that the bait can kind of like hang on or cling to, but it's still soft, what you can do is actually rip this bait and get a reaction strike. And what's really cool with this Sergeant that I noticed is the way it falls. I think Kevin Van Dam back in the day talked about it with the red eye shad. A lot of rattle traps, they don't fall directly down. They don't do like a straight down shimmy. This thing not only does a straight down shimmy, but when you rip it and let it settle back down to the bottom, it actually settles what I would describe as a little bit slower than your standard half-ounce trap. The fall is very vertical, so it comes down, and then it also shakes back and forth as it falls, and it does so a little bit slower. And I think for these colder kind of water periods, that early spring, late winter kind of window, having something that falls a hair slower, you're getting that reaction, you're getting, ripping that bait, moving it fast, but then if it falls ever so slightly slower, you're gonna get more bites because it gives them a little bit more of a window to kind of think about it and then close the deal. A lot like what we talk about when you're Senko fishing. It's all about that fall, dude, that reaction to the fall. But the Sergeant has been, dude, I've whacked them on it. I'll be perfectly honest. I actually kind of didn't want to put it in the videos, but I'm always open with you guys about the stuff that I'm using. This guy in this chrome red has been absolutely stellar for early spring fish, dude. It's killing it. And it has to do with that body shape as well as the lack of vibration, the lack of rattles. The other one that I've been working with is this guy, and I actually have one in the package. I got one tied up, and I'm going to show you the combos that we're using. But this is a Nishine. It's a newish Japanese company. My buddy Jacob Wall put me onto it, but it's the Nishine Simco 7.5. They also make a half-ounce as well. Once again with this guy, there's no rattle in there. That's only the hooks kind of vibrating. And that's actually something to note too. You get some kind of vibration and some kind of rattle with just the hooks being on there with split rings. It's just a lot more subtle than the BB sound that you get. But what's cool with this guy, it's a lot of the same principles. The body shape is very rounded out. There aren't a bunch of flat areas on this guy, which once again, it reduces sort of the resistance in the water when you reel it in. You're still getting that vibration, but it's not as pronounced. It's not as just obtuse as, like your rattle traps, your one knockers, your red eye shads. And what's cool with this guy, comes in the 3/4 ounce. I can fish this thing down to like 6 to 10 feet, through grass strands, off of like rocky points. And what's kind of neat is based upon how you want to fish it, there's actually 2 different ties right there. So it comes with a little clip like I like to use on my crankbaits, and it has 2 different line ties right there. So depending on how you want that head to point down, if you want it to be more vertical, use the second head. If you want it to be a little more nose down, you can use that first tie. I'll be honest with you, 90% of the time I'm using that second tie because it works better when I'm ripping it through the grass than having the head down. If you're fishing maybe like a harder bottom where you're actually like nose digging this thing, I'd look at using that first tie on it. But once again, it's the same principles as the Thunderhawk. It's the lack of rattle. It's a silent trap. It has a very cool fall to it where it's just kind of shimmying down, falls a little bit faster because it is the 3/4. I haven't got my hands on the half-ounce of this version. Good hooks on it, but then that rounded out body for a much more subtle vibration. But once again, you can still fish it in dirty water. That's really what's been amazing to me is I've caught fish in pretty stained, dirty kind of post-rain water, even on a silent trap, which is something I wouldn't expect. Comes in some cool colors. I think this is like a yellow, like a chartreuse. I forget which one this is. This is chartreuse shad. I actually have a jerkbait that looks exactly like this, but they also have the red version available. But it's something different. Like we've always talked about, doing the same thing slightly different is a huge key to being successful. There's a certain sort of bait regiment that works during certain times of year, but if you can get slightly outside the standard presentations that everybody else is making, you can really increase your catch rate. play and really tap into fish that haven't seen a lure before. And you'd be amazed how they eat a lure that they haven't seen or felt with their lateral line versus trying to catch them on a one knocker, trying to catch them on a classic trap. This is my half-ounce setup. Basically what I have here, this is a 7.3 Halo XD3 Pro medium action. So it's a medium power rod, has a pretty soft tip to it, and it's pretty long, 7.3. So I can make super long casts with this, pick up a lot of line. I can rip the bait and then reel down on it pretty easily. But that softer tip, because this is crankbait fishing, because we're dealing with treble hooks, I like having a little more wonk in the tip. It leads to better hook sets. I don't miss as many fish, and I feel like I can control the bait a little bit better, as well as control the fish when I'm fighting them and I actually hook them, because I got more rod to kind of play around with them. Now I'm running it on, this is I think a 7.2 Shimano SLX, a high speed or higher speed reel. The reason for that is I can always slow down and slow roll this, which I've been doing a lot of. However, when I rip that bait, I want to be able to pick up all that line that I kind of ripped just in case they eat it, because oftentimes they'll eat it at that highest point when you rip it or just as it's settling down, and you'll have a lot of slack line in between there, so you want to be able to get tension back on that line. But definitely look for a softer kind of tip rod. I wouldn't recommend, fiberglass or anything like that. This is still a graphite rod. You want that sensitivity. But the biggest difference is, I think, between my presentation and my setup with a lipless crankbait is I'm running 12-pound test on here. So the reason is I want the thing to run a little bit deeper. I like running a little bit lower diameter line. I feel like the fish don't see it as much. It doesn't displace as much water. I feel like I get more bites on it. I have a little more bait control as well. Plus I can make crazy long casts. But that is for my half-ounce setup. For my 3/4 ounce setup, I do up the line a little bit, and it's a little more of a traditional presentation. So everything is exactly the same right here. 7.2 SLX, 7.3 medium action XD3, a little longer rod. I can make some long casts, but I'm running 15-pound fluorocarbon. A couple reasons. One, the 3/4 is a little heavier bait. It is a little easier to cast it off if you're using lighter line. Plus it's 3/4. It's getting down without needing that lighter line. I feel a little more comfortable throwing it on that. The other thing is I've noticed the Nishine puts out a little bit more vibration, in the sense of it gives a lot more report to the rod. So I don't need that lighter line to feel that subtle wobble that I get with the Thunderhawk. The Thunderhawk is a super subtle wobble. It'll take some getting used to if you're not used to fishing silent traps. But the Nishine puts out a little more vibration. I like a little bit heavier line because it sort of dulls that a little bit, but it's pretty much the same setup. And that's what's nice too, is it makes me very comfortable to switch back and forth between the two. So it's the same cast ability, the same rod, same action. Only thing really different is the line and then the weight of the lipless. I will put links to all these guys, the Thunderhawk as well as the Nishine, down in the description box at the Tackle Warehouse if you can get your hands on them. I know they kind of got cleaned out, but both of them, same concept, lipless crankbaits, early spring, late winter, they work. It's just a sort of different variation of it, that silent presentation will trigger fish that aren't super keen on hitting something that's making a lot of noise. Plus the vibration is a lot more subtle, so especially if you're dealing with either clear water or highly pressured fish, you're going to be surprised at the amount of bites that you get versus using a traditional lipless. However, at the same time, that is not to say, a one knocker or a BB oriented, maybe like the Uzuri Rattling vibe, which looks like I got a few of right here, won't work. These are all viable, but playing around with that vibration will help you to tap into different fish, and especially size. I've noticed that using those different vibrations, I might get two 2-pounders on say a one knocker, and then I'll pick up the silent and I'll catch a 4-pounder. When you have fish that are sort of set up on a certain technique or a certain pattern like that, you need to play around with your presentations in the way of vibration as well as color. And those are two important things you can do with your lipless, and they're super easy to do this time of year because they're biting a lipless, so you can kind of have a couple rods set up to try different variations and get a few extra bites and maybe catch that big one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and 7 days of lipless crankbaits. If you missed the first part, go on back. We went out to Gunnersville and we absolutely wrecked them on this guy and this guy. But check them out. The pros are fishing these guys on tour. It's definitely a new variation on lipless crankbait fishing. A little more subtle, a little more finesse, which I like, but definitely get some big bites. We will see you next time, either from the garage or talking fishing from the boat, catching some bass. Tight lines, guys.